We're going to give people just a few minutes to join up. I know it's now 6:01, but we'll start in just a moment. Okay, we've stopped going up. We will get going. Good evening. I'm Steve Engel, the Chancellor of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this online forum, question and answer session for targeted to parents. As we're all getting ready for the fall, this is a new thing for all of us. I know sending kids to college. I've had an older son go off to college and understand the anxiety in good times. And with this global pandemic, it's very different for all of us. I'm going to introduce the people who will be speaking tonight and answering questions, and then we will, I'll give a few remarks, our provost and Vice Chancellor will, and then we'll take some of the questions. But so tonight we've got Dr. Richard Brown, Executive Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, who is here. Dr. Jerry Hale, Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. Dr. Yancey Freeman, Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs. And Dr. Chris Smith, our Chief Health Affairs Officer and the Director of our Nursing Program. So this is a unique time in our whole society with a global pandemic and what we're facing. I want to tell you, we are looking forward to fall. We're looking forward to having your students on our campus, and we are focusing on two priorities. One is the safety and well-being of our entire campus community, our students, our faculty, our staff, those that visit during the day. The second priority is the quality of our educational programs to ensure that we can offer the very best educational experience for our students. We have had hundreds of people spending thousands of hours preparing for this coming fall. I hope you'll get an idea tonight that this is a team effort. There are an incredible number of people involved. Those of us that are answering questions are just the tip of the iceberg, and each of us works with a team of people who are committed, passionate, and driven to do the very best job possible for our students. So with that, I want to just let our Provost, Jerry Hale, make a few comments. And
you would think after hundreds of Zoom meetings that I sat through, I would remember to unmute my microphone. I just want to add my welcome to you this evening and tell you how much we're looking forward to having you and your students on our campus in a few weeks. We are looking forward to delivering a high quality group of academic programs to students, and we're confident that we can do that even given the global pandemic that we're faced with currently. So I'm anxious to talk with you this evening and anxious to get to know your students in the coming weeks.
And Dr. Yancey Freeman has housing, student affairs, enrollment management report up through him. If you'd just like to make a couple comments, and then we'll move to our moderators.
Thank you, Chancellor. Yes, I would. And again, I want to just emphasize again, as the Chancellor has said and Provost Hill has already mentioned, we are really excited to engage with you tonight and talk with you. I've had the pleasure of talking with some of our new parents during the orientation sessions, and so ready to hear questions from parents who are currently here. And I have the fun division, so I'll just put that out there so that folks know it as well. But we're excited to be here and excited to answer questions for you.
So Susan Lesenby will take over as moderator. I'll turn it over to you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Engel. Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Lazenby from the University of Tennessee's IT department, and my colleague Laura Cagle and I will be monitoring today's webinar. We'll be going through some pre-submitted questions and also working through as many questions that you submit in the session as well. Laura?
Hi there. We will start with a pre-submitted question about housing. How will each student be cohabitating? Will visitors be allowed in dorm rooms? Dr. Freeman?
Yes, thank you for that question. We've been working on this for the last 3 or 4 months in preparation for this upcoming fall term. We have done a number of things to prepare students for this upcoming term as it relates to housing. Beginning with, we've reduced our occupancy significantly so far so that we can practice social distancing within the residence halls. And so we've done that so that we have some separation of students within the residence halls and beds and in those common spaces, common areas that are there. We have in common spaces removed chairs and tables where we typically would have space that would allow lots of students to gather and group together. When students return in the fall, they're going to see very different sort of spaces there that allow them to socially distance and see lots of signage there as they, as they come back and begin to engage in at the beginning of the fall term. So we are preparing and making sure that we have those pieces in place for students. Part of the rules that we have put in place for housing as well is a visitation policy. We will not have any outside visitors on campus who will be able to visit the residence halls, and so that policy is in place, and we will be monitoring it as best we can for the beginning of the term. Visitation has been reduced. Typically for freshman students, we have set visitation hours, and for upperclassmen, they have a little bit more liberal policy. For this upcoming fall term, though, visitation is going to be limited from noon until 10 p.m. And so students will be limited between those times, and it will only be residential students who will be able to come into the residential halls. And so I hope that answers the question about visitation policy and as we go forward for the fall.
Thank you so much, Dr. Freeman. I have another follow-up to that question. How are the residence halls being managed for social distancing? I understand roommates become a household, but how will the students be kept from going to room or the use of shared common areas like kitchen and laundry?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are in our goals for setting up housing for this fall. As you can imagine, it will be difficult for us to keep students from going from, if they're residential students, going from one room to the next. We are asking them, however, to social distance in the residence halls, and also to make sure that if they are outside of their apartments, that they are wearing a mask, or a face covering as they get outside of their apartments. And so that's part of the goal for this. I want to make sure that I emphasize in this as well that we are setting it up so that there are hand sanitizing stations that are going to be available within common areas, at stairwells, near elevators, so that students have access to those. We're going to also do cleaning materials for students in the residence hall so that they can get to those cleaning materials as they are there as well. And again, as I stated, we're doing the social distancing for those students in terms of those common areas that they might visit. Students will be able to reserve space in the laundry room. And so there is an app that they will learn about when they get here that will allow them to reserve a washer and a dryer. The app is so wonderful that it also tells them when the washer has completed, so they don't have to sit there in the laundry area to wait, as well as being able to reserve kitchen space. And so we are going to ask students to comply with those regulations around reserving space to accomplish those functions in the traditional residence halls that we have.
Dr. Freeman, we've had a question be submitted through the Q&A function about housing as well. Will students in overflow housing stay in those rooms for the entire semester?
So we, right now, we have, in addition to our normal housing setting, Palmetto Place, and we are planning to have those. We've signed a one-year lease with Palmetto Place that is not located directly on campus. We have signed a one-year lease with them, and we intend to keep those students there. That's the only overflow housing we have at this point for students, is what we have at Palmetto Place. And we don't intend to displace those students. If they choose to, move, they could, probably move back in the spring if they want to do that. But we will have those units available for students who want to remain there through the entire year.
Thank you. Dr. Smith, we have a question for you. How will we handle a student living in a dorm that tests positive for COVID-19? At what point is a student tested for the virus if they find out they've been around someone that tested positive? If a student is ill, will he or she be exempt from class? And Dr. Smith, if you could unmute yourself, that'd be great.
Excuse me, my grandson keeps calling me on the phone. Of all the times for him to call me. He's turning 4 next week and he's learned how to dial the phone and he just keeps calling. Sorry about that. So let's start again now that I'm unmuted and got rid of my poor grandson. So let's talk about the scenario, because as I said, it's really actually a very good one. So a student presents with symptoms of COVID-19 or has been, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, son, you have to hang up. I'm on a very important meeting. Okay, don't call me again. Don't call me again. Bye. Sorry you had to hear all that. I do love him, but God. Okay, let me regroup. I am actually a very kind person and I love children, but not during this very important part. I love all your children that are coming to UTC. I will not give them my phone number though. Okay, so anyway, a student presents with COVID-19 symptoms or has been in close contact with somebody who is positive, and they're tested immediately. So in either one of those scenarios, we're going to actually test the students. And based on their test, we either isolate them or if they have symptoms, or quarantine them if there are no symptoms. And what we're going to do is, through an arrangement with campus housing, we're going to move them from their room they're assigned to another room where they'll be there for a period of time. The student who actually tests positive and has symptoms will be in isolation for at least 10 days since their symptoms appeared. And we'll walk through an algorithm with them, and they have to have at least the 10-day period plus 3 days in which there's been no fever. So on day 10, they're fever free. They go 3 more days as long as they have not had a fever with any kind of antipyretic, a Tylenol, ibuprofen, something like that. So at least 72 hours has passed since their recovery. And that's resolution of fever, but also we're looking at their symptoms, shortness of breath, cough, all those kind of things. So there has to be an improvement in respiratory symptoms. For the student who does not have symptoms, okay, they are the asymptomatic person who just happens to get tested because they might have an exposure. We use something called a time-based strategy. Now the symptom-based strategy and the time-based strategy are evidence-based algorithms that were developed by the CDC. So this isn't something that we've just made up. This is evidence-based practice. So for a student who does not have symptoms, we use this time-based strategies. And again, at least 10 days have passed since their date of their positive test for the first time. And assuming that they haven't developed symptoms since their positive test, then we move them to the next part of their recovery. The question also asked about students being excused from class based on isolation or quarantine requirements. Absolutely, they will be excused from class. And we will make every effort through the Dean of Students office to make sure that they don't fall behind or they are penalized for not being in class. Again, I apologize for the grandson.
Dr. Smith, thank you so much for your answer. I do have a follow-up question that was submitted live. We have a question that says, in my daughter's experience, the clinic is very busy all the time. Has staff been increased for those with and without COVID who need to go?
Yes, I'm very happy to tell you, yes, we have. We have another nurse practitioner and another full-time nurse. So we will have 7 nurse practitioners. We'll probably have 3 providers every day. So that is something that we are very happy to have right now. We also have been doing a tremendous amount of telehealth, and the COVID nurse, BSN prepared registered nurse, she will be screening calls through telehealth. If it is beyond her scope of practice, the COVID nurse practitioner will take those calls. So yes, we feel at this point in time, we're very grateful for the increased staff. So yeah, we have more people coming.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Dr. Brown, I have a question for you. What campus facilities will be affected by or closed due to COVID-19? Eateries, shops, libraries, etc. And if so, will there be any refunds due to a partial campus experience?
Well, what we're hoping for is that there will not be a partial campus experience. We've been working really hard over the summer to take care of our facilities and get them ready for your students to return this fall. All of our buildings have undergone a major deep cleaning by our building services staff. We've disinfected all the buildings. We've added hand sanitizing stations throughout our buildings to get ready for students to return. We've actually worked really, really hard on social distancing strategies within the facilities, making sure that the furnishings are distanced 6 feet apart, so to minimize any type of spread. Our classrooms also have been realigned and redesigned to make sure that we practice CDC approved social distancing within our classroom facilities. All major buildings will be open and ready for use. The library will be fully open, even though it'll look a little different. We've social distanced inside that facility to make sure, again, students are safe. Health and safety are our #1 priority. Eateries and all will be open. Our main food lines will be open. They're redesigned for social distancing, making sure that that can happen in a nice way and minimize any spread of COVID-19 in those facilities. You'll see us add exterior spaces for students to go outside the buildings and eat in some beautiful open air spaces. We look forward to having the students back on the campus. The grounds are just beautiful. The campus looks great, and great seating areas outside of the campus as well. Some of our eateries, however, we're practicing safe practices. You will see Starbucks, instead of being able to sit down in Starbucks, it'll be kind of grab and go in a line where you can take it outside on the portico and eat there in a social distance type of environment. So we've taken really, really great care in our facilities to make sure, #1, that they're clean. #2, we've disinfected those things, and we can do that daily. So the building services protocols will be wiping down what we call frequently touched areas, doorknobs, entry doors, all the above. We've got a great cleaning protocol inside of classrooms. we've worked really, really hard. Hundreds and hundreds of our staff have worked hard to get the facilities ready.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I have a follow-up question that was submitted live. For students, Dr. Smith, that are in quarantine because they've been exposed or tested positive, how will they receive in-class instruction online with their peers, or will their classes be in person and online at the same time?
Susan, if you don't mind, I'll ask Dr. Hale to answer that question.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hale?
Sure. We're planning on just about all of the above. A number of the classes will be simultaneously online and face-to-face in what we're calling a rotated classroom format. For the ones that are exclusively face-to-face, if a student goes into quarantine, we're planning to do things like offering note-taking services to students. We're also trying, we are upgrading our classroom facilities just in the last couple of weeks. We have upgraded the classroom facilities so that 40 additional classrooms, and we're heading toward 50 additional classrooms in addition to the ones that we already had that will have lecture capture capabilities so that those lectures can be captured and students can watch them at their convenience instead of at the synchronously presented period of time. So we think a combination of all of those things, both lecture capture, the rotated classroom process that we're going to use, and then some additional note-taking services, and we should be able to keep students abreast of everything that's going on in their classes if they have to quarantine or be isolated.
Thank you, Dr. Hale. Next question, I think, for Dr. Freeman. My daughter and I have not completely decided our comfort level in her living in a dorm this fall. Is it too late to make that decision? And what about the housing deposit we paid if we choose not to use the dorm because of COVID?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I will say that we have, from a housing perspective, gone back and we sent a note to a number of students just recently telling them that if they would like to be released from their housing contract, they can do so until July 31st, until the end of this month. Whether it is because they have all online classes and they have decided that they want to stay home and take those courses, or if it is a COVID-related issue, that they can let us know by July 31st, and we will allow them to be released from the contract with no penalty.
Thank you so much, Dr. Freeman. I have a follow-up question to that. Will dorms be professionally sanitized occasionally, or will students be responsible for that? Will there be hand sanitizer stations at elevators and stairs, etc.?
So the answer to all of that is yes, and yes, and yes. We have hired a company to come help us with sanitizing, in particular the common areas that are there. It is our expectation, and the students will see a lot of signs across campus, and in particular in the residence halls, about good sanitizing practices around washing their hands and using those sanitizing stations. They will be set up all over campus so that students have an opportunity to use them as they come into the buildings and exit the buildings, at stairwells, elevators, all over the place. Our goal has been that students will see them about every 100 feet. So as they stand at one hand sanitizing station, they'll see the next one from the one that they're standing at, so that we can try to push as much as we can for them around making certain that they're using them. We do have an outside company coming in to help us with cleaning. We do also expect our students to clean their personal spaces. We are not, as a rule, we do not enter the student's room and do cleaning for them or checks. We'll do wellness checks on students, but they do have notification when we're doing those wellness checks. But we will not go in and clean the student's room, but we will make sure that the common spaces are cleaned, including handrails and doorknobs and that kind of thing.
Dr. Freeman, a couple of follow-up questions on that. Could you talk a little bit about the reduced occupancy that Housing and Residence Life has planned for this semester?
Sure, yeah, we have a couple of traditional residence halls, one in West Campus and the other one in Stagmeyer, where we have reduced rooms. The other large majority of the rooms are, where they have their own bedroom. And so those have not been reduced as much because students have their own bedroom area. They have that personal space, but a lot of the reduction has been in those traditional halls, and in particular when we can't, distance the beds appropriately based on guidelines from our health folks and also CDC guidelines as we get them. And so that's where those reductions have come, is in those traditional residence halls.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Dr. Brown, we have a question about Crossroads. Will it be open 7 days a week? Last year it was not open on Saturdays.
Well, we paid a lot of attention to food service offerings throughout the campus. We understand that that's really essential to animation of the campus and the student experience. Typically on Saturdays, Crossroads had been underutilized, so we really didn't have the volume to open it. So the hours of operation will be Monday through Friday from about 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. at night. But we've changed the lineup a little bit inside of Crossroads. It was kind of our all-you-could-eat eatery, but in able to have CDC guidelines compliance, you're going to see us fully serve those meals inside of Crossroads for the student, and they can actually eat inside, socially distanced, about 67 spaces inside the facility. But we've created some beautiful spaces on the exterior of the facility also for students to take that meal outside in a grab and go kind of environment. So you're going to see us have a hot grill in there, a homemade meal, what we call a meat in three, typical pizza. We're going to be doing pastas and deli salads, and of course, a full line of pizzas and desserts inside that building. So we're excited about that. We've also alerted our food service operator, Airmark, that if demand goes up, we will open on Saturday.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Dr. Brown, sorry, Susan. We've actually gotten a follow-up question about dining services. Could you talk a little bit about the concepts in the University Center and if anything will be impacted with operations this fall?
Of course, opening a restaurant operation, one has to look at social distancing. So we've worked very hard with our safety team to make sure that the design of our main eatery in the University Center is socially distanced, so students can be 6 feet apart and eat safely in that environment. But we'll have a full lineup of favorite foods. I wish I could produce 16 Chick-fil-A's. That would be busy the whole time, but we will continue to have Chick-fil-A and all the major brands inside of that facility. We've also expanded the seating into the Chattanooga rooms in the University Center to accommodate social distancing for our students, to make sure that they have a really, really good experience inside the UC. So the typical lineup of foods will be there. You will see social distancing throughout. We've got Scrappy's feet, our birds' feet all over the floor, so you can stay 6 feet apart inside that facility.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Dr. Freeman, I have a question. If students' classes are all online, do they have to live on campus?
No, there is not a requirement that students live on campus. I just mentioned in the last statement that we were permitting students who had all online classes to not live on campus if they chose to not do so. I will say, however, that one of the easiest ways to get engaged on campus is to live in our campus housing. We are planning a number of programs, well socially distanced programs, but a number of programs to engage students out of the classroom. We have found time and time again that the retention rate for students who live in the residence halls is always higher than the general population, and we want to believe that it is because we do programs to try to engage students in activities that occur on campus and to make sure that they have a life as they learn about sort of this new experience around college. And so there is not a requirement that is there, but we love having our students living on campus, and so we would love to have them.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Will students be able to move freely about campus if they are living there? And will the aquatic and gym facilities be open for them to use?
So yes, we are planning to have the ARC. Our students know it as the ARC, the Aquatic and Recreation Center. We are planning to have it opened for student use in the fall. We are going to have it socially distanced, and I'm going to be like a broken record as I continue to say this. So where students would have treadmills about every 3 feet, you're going to see that students are skipping, that we are skipping treadmill usage, and there's space between those, and asking students they will not be able to use those and some of the other workout equipment. We're going to have sanitizing wipes there and asking them to wipe down equipment as they, prior to their use and after their use, as they walk into the ARC. But yes, we are planning to have it open and to provide that wellness activity for students for the fall.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. We'll move into recreation on that note. Will intramurals be available? I know that was something that had been pre-submitted and also submitted in the chat live.
Yeah, we are planning to do intramurals. It is going to look very differently than previous years. So we will likely not do the high touch, high activity ones. Like flag football is usually a really popular one. Basketball is really a popular one. You'll see us do more things that are individual sports for students through our intramural program. But yes, we are planning to still have intramural activities for the fall as well.
Thank you. Dr. Hale, I have a question for you. What will the school be doing to help new students and returning students engage with fellow students and faculty? Will efforts be made to offer some form of meeting and study help, even if virtually?
Yes, and a lot of our student success efforts are run through enrollment management and student affairs, and so I want to invite Dr. Freeman to jump in if I leave anything out or if I inadvertently misspeak. But we do plan, you heard Dr. Freeman earlier mention that there would be vibrant student life opportunities, both in terms of things happening in the residence halls. All of our student organizations are going to continue to meet either virtually or where appropriate social distancing is available, they'll meet in face-to-face settings. It's also the case that a number of those student organizations are at least what I would refer to as co-curricular activities and not extracurricular activities, and a lot of them are grounded in whatever they're studying in their departments and things like that. Those organizations will continue to meet. It's also the case that students will have opportunities to see faculty members face-to-face in office hours or virtually, but still have face-to-face contact with them either electronically or in offices. Our safety division has looked at all of the office spaces on campus and has determined that there is room for appropriate social distancing to have a student in a one-on-one setting with a faculty member in an office. And so all of those things are going to happen. And for all of the reasons that Dr. Freeman mentioned, we know that having students plug into campus life, whether it's extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, or just being able to connect with faculty members are really keys to student success. And we may be experiencing a global pandemic, but we are committed to student success on this campus, and we will continue to be, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that your student succeeds while he or she is here. On that score, one other thing that I'll mention is that all of our student support services in the way of academic support, tutorial services, and things like that will also continue to operate in a number of formats. Dr. Freeman, please jump in.
You spoke that so well, I thought we were twins. And so I will just say that in addition to what the provost has already shared with you, we are planning to continue to have tutoring opportunities available for students. Some of that is going to be online possibilities for students, and we'll do supplemental instruction opportunities for students as well. Those are going to be mostly virtual sort of sessions where we have upper class students who have performed well in a course. They go back and provide some additional instruction for students in an online format to help them. And finally, we have an online tutoring service that we provide. So I know a lot of families have been concerned about students and their ability to engage and be able to study and get additional support, academic support. We do have an online tutoring service that we provide for students that they would be able to utilize as well in making sure that they can remain up on their studies.
Thank you both. Dr. Smith, could you talk a little bit about what the plans are for social distancing and how it will be encouraged and or enforced on campus?
Sure, thank you very much. First of all, to encourage social distancing, I think educating the campus regarding the effectiveness of this mechanism will be very important. I think everything that we're going to do this year is very important, that education is shared with student faculty and staff so that they understand why we're asking them to do these things that really are not very innate to most of us. So presenting data that we have that show actually when social distancing is not adhered to really impacts the rate of positive cases. And I think we've seen that already from Memorial Day, and now we're seeing the numbers from the 4th of July. So I think it's a real-time experience looking at epidemiology. We have a media campaign, we have student and staff education modules, we're developing a social contract as some of the other strategies that we're looking at. And we're also looking at launching a campus program in regard to bystander intervention and how to appropriately ask those around us to please maintain social distance of 6 feet. Is a very important tool that's been very effective in other areas on our campus. So we're going to expand that to make sure that everybody has the appropriate tools to ask someone to remain 6 feet apart. That's going to be rolled out campus-wide and very soon. And again, we've configured classrooms, as you've heard multiple times already, in common spaces to adhere to the 6 feet rule. Now, what if a student or even a faculty or staff member continues to ignore the 6 feet social distancing request? For students, we'll go to the Dean of Students office and ask them to intervene. And then if it's an employee who just doesn't pay attention to these, human resources will address the concern.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. We have a follow-up question that's been asked several times in the live chat. Can you talk about the campus's policy on masks?
Yes, they are required. It's pretty simple. As I think was said earlier, everybody, faculty, staff, and students will have 2 masks that are provided for them. There will be masks throughout the entire campus. There will be masks inside a classroom in case a student forgets to show up with his or her mask. Faculty can hand them a disposable mask. So yes, the masks are required in all campus buildings, inside in classrooms, and no matter the size of the classroom. We don't want the students to have to worry about when do I wear a mask and when don't I wear a mask. When you go into a building, whether it's a classroom or meeting with an advisor in an office or going into Crossroads, anytime a student, faculty, or staff member is inside a building, a mask is required.
Laura has a follow-up to Dr. Smith as well. Very shortly, your students will be mailed 2 of our face masks along with a message from the chancellor. So we are mailing those out to try to touch students before they get to the campus. And we branded our face mask with the power C, with our logo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown and Dr. Smith. I appreciate that. Dr. Smith, how will students practice social distancing in classes with over 100 students?
I'll start that question and I'll let Dr. Hale finish if he wishes. At this point in time, there are no classes with 100 students in it. We spent a lot of time looking at classroom sections, and we're following the American College Health Association guideline that there will be no more than 30 people in a room. So I'll let Dr. Hale finish that, but it's my understanding there will not be a class of that size face-to-face.
That's correct. The only classes that we might have of that size would be classes that are going to be completely online, either synchronously or asynchronously. Other than that, we have a few exceptions to the ACHA guideline of no more than 30 people in a classroom. Mostly those are going to be for graduate classes where the graduate program, all of the students are part of a cohort where they have to take the same classes together as they progress through their program. But in all other instances, what will happen is you will not see more than 30 people in a classroom. Now, if a class is going to enroll more than 30 students, it will enroll those students in what we're referring to as a rotating classroom format, so that some portions of the class will be done in a face-to-face setting with some students in the class on, say, a Tuesday, and then another portion of the students in a class on a Thursday, while the other students are on the days that they are not face-to-face, are watching virtually and synchronously as the class is being conducted. So we are going to be very serious about the number of students that we have in classroom spaces. Not all of our classrooms, once we appropriately socially distance students, will even hold 30 students. And so the 30-person cap is a maximum, except for very few exceptions again. But some classes will be smaller than that. And we've had people, including some of the folks who are listening to the call, we have gone around to every single one of our classrooms to determine what the maximum capacity is in that classroom for the 6-foot social distancing protocol that we have in place. And so many of our classrooms, including some of our large lecture halls, will be capped at 30, and they'll be capped at 30 or fewer, depending on those social distancing protocols.
Dr. Hill, as a follow-up to that, how will lab classes work with required lab partner work?
Well, a lot of our lab classes that would have traditionally paired students with a lab partner, there's now not going to be a lab partner. The students will be in the lab and working by themselves, or if they are working with a partner, what's going to happen is the partners will be expected to socially distance, and then as they rotate through a workstation or a piece of equipment, what will happen is there will be some cleaning and disinfecting protocols in place as well. Parents need to know that the disinfecting protocols for our laboratories and for our lab classes are protocols that are long-standing in nature. If you're a student, for example, had a natural science class in the last year, it is a regular part of the protocols that are followed that students will disinfect an area when they come into it, and then they'll disinfect an area before they leave it. And that happens as students rotate through the areas as well. And so we believe that we'll have cleaning protocols in place and social distancing protocols in place that are designed to make sure that we keep students very safe in those sorts of laboratory classes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hale. Dr. Freeman, could you talk a little bit about the restrictions for the dining area, please?
Sure, Dr. Brown has already alluded to this in quite a significant way, but I'll just emphasize that we are planning to have social distancing requirements in place for students in the dining area as well. I think Dr. Brown mentioned that we're going to have stickers on the floor that talk about 6-foot distancing, for students who are in the dining area. we are opening additional rooms because what you'll see in the dining area now are fewer tables and fewer chairs at seats so that students will be able to sit. And so we are spacing it out some and using some of the rooms in the university center, some outdoor spaces that would provide additional seating areas for students if they choose to sit there. And we are strongly encouraging students to grab and go if they will, and especially taking those items outside and eating at some of the tables that we'll have set up. And so those restrictions will be certainly around making certain that we socially distance. I've gotten a question previously about whether or not students will have to wear their mask when they're eating. We certainly don't want them to wear a mask while they're eating. We will allow them to, remove it for that period of time, but we do want them wearing them if they're not in their residence hall room. So.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. Dr. Smith, we've had a nursing department question come up through the live chat, so this is perfect. We have a parent whose daughter is a senior in a nursing school. She has clinicals that she will have to continue. Should there be a shutdown at UTC, will nursing students, especially those so close to graduating, have to stay to fulfill those clinical requirements? If so, what safety provisions will be put in place for them to be able?
That's a really good question, and I'm so happy to get a nursing question. So we have a little bit of experience with this because we did this in March, and actually when we had made the decision that we were going to go all online, I proposed to Dr. Hale and the executive leadership team a proposal that said we put a protocol in place, and they allowed us to continue to allow our students to go to clinical. And of course, we have to have clinical sites. If the clinical sites say, nope, you can't bring students in, there's too much COVID here and we don't want to expose them, or there's not enough PPE, that's kind of part of the equation. In this particular instance, for a while, the hospitals continued to say, sure, bring them on. Well, we allowed that to go on for about a week, but our faculty was very on top of it. We watched what was happening and potential exposures, and we actually pulled the plug before the hospital said it was not safe for outside people to come into the hospital situation. So we will monitor it. If the campus goes back on partial shutdown or whatever, I'll go back to the executive leadership team, propose a plan if our faculty and I feel like it's safe for the students. The good news is this: we have a pretty robust simulation department, and if you have a student who's getting ready to be a senior, I know who that student is because I taught them this last semester. But the point is this: we have a great simulation center, and the Tennessee Board of Nursing, along with our accrediting body, have said that we can move into simulation. So we have, again, submitted to Dr. Hale a protocol on how the students have to sign into the lab. They go through the self-check app, they disinfect before and after, and we have social distancing in the simulation lab. So there still is a possibility that our students can finish up the semester getting their clinical hours. So we have plans in place for that. Our faculty has worked all summer to make sure that we can continue to make sure that our students from BSN all the way through our Doctor of Nursing Practice program can continue and graduate on time. That's our goal, because the bottom line is this: we are educating nurses who are really needed out in the community. So we're going to do everything we can to, one, keep them safe, and two, get them really good clinical experiences. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Dr. Hale, we have gotten several questions about online classes and schedules being finalized. Could you speak a little bit about what that time frame and online classes versus in-person classes as far as percentage looks like, please?
Sure. Right now we are at about 40% of our classes that are in some face-to-face format, and I'll explain those formats in just a second, and about 60% of our classes are online. I think it's important for parents to know why this is happening. It's happening so that we can keep the campus environment as safe as possible. When you impose the sorts of safety protocols that we have, where no more than 30 students will be in nearly all of our classes, And sometimes the number of students in those classes will be even smaller for social distancing purposes. What it's done is it has significantly reduced the number of students that can be accommodated in those face-to-face environments. Now, we've done some other things. We've expanded our daily academic calendars so that we have a few more classes that are being taught early in the morning and a few more classes that are being taught later into the day. But that's part of the reason that's happening and why we have that 40 to 60% ratio between classes. For our face-to-face classes, we're using face-to-face now to mean any of the following. Some of our classes will meet face-to-face with the entire class for every single class period. Others will be taught in a rotated fashion that I explained earlier, where if it's a Tuesday, Thursday class, half the class will come on Tuesday and the other half of the class will see the classroom environment virtually, and then they would flip-flop for Thursday. The same thing might happen on Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, and so on and so forth. There will be others that are taught with a different quantity of face-to-face versus virtual classroom opportunities, but that's what's happening face-to-face right now. And again, it's being done to protect the health and safety of our students, of our faculty, and our staff. Our online class opportunities can be done either synchronously or asynchronously. The synchronous ones would be where the professor, through the extraordinary technology that we have on campus, is delivering a lecture and students are watching it in real time as it's being delivered, and they are able to interact with the faculty member as they would in any classroom environment if it were completely face-to-face. Others of our online classes will be asynchronous classes where the students may interact with the faculty member in a question and answer format, much like what's going on for this webinar, for example, but it would be done not necessarily in real time. Usually there's not much of a lag between the time that a faculty member might get a question from a student and respond to it. There are also synchronous activities that typically happen for classes that don't have a particular meeting time, but our classes will involve in the fall all of those various formats, and that's a little bit different than what might have been happening 2 or 3 years ago on campus. But as we have begun to offer more and more of our classes online as a matter of course, we believe we have honed those various instructional formats where we can deliver really excellent courses to our students. And in fact, if you look at the data from student learning outcomes, you can have student learning outcomes for those sorts of virtual classes and the various kinds of face-to-face classes that would match the student learning outcomes that would occur in classes that were completely face-to-face.
Thank you, Dr. Hale. We do only have about 5 minutes left in this hour. I know we've had a ton of questions come in through the Q&A, and we are trying to get through as many topics as we can. Dr. Freeman, if you want to start us off with this question, if a student gets ill and has immunocompromised family at home, preventing the student from coming home, what does UTC plan to do for their quarantine on campus and make sure they have food from the meal plan delivered to them?
I want to pass this off to Dr. Smith. She has been working intently on the schedule for what happens for a student who's been quarantined. And so, Dr. Smith, will you answer and I can backfill any sort of response that we need?
Sure, absolutely. If the student gets ill, as we talked earlier, they will be placed in either isolation or quarantine, depending on the situation. We have Aramark Food Services on campus, and they will deliver them 3 meals a day to their rooms. We have made sure that their housekeeping needs will be addressed, so they will not miss a meal. This is 7 days a week. So we will care for them really well. If they are in quarantine or isolation, University Health Services will be checking on them through telemedicine, and if need be, we would go make a house call with them. We will also have the counseling center through their telehealth options be able to check on students. So they'll be monitored very, very closely.
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Smith.
Oh, Laura, go ahead.
I was going to say thank you, Dr. Smith. We did have one question about the quarantine area. How many units are we planning for, and what happens if the quarantine area reaches maximum capacity?
Dr. Freeman, do you want me to answer that? Would you like to take that one?
Yeah, we are trying to reserve as many units as we can around quarantine areas. In fact, we had a meeting today to talk about how we could ensure that we had at least enough to help us to manage through the fall term. And so we are talking about as many as we can spare to meet housing demand and also meet the demand of those students who might need to be isolated or quarantined for the fall term.
Dr. Brown, the next question would be for you. How are you going to provide protection to all students against COVID-19 when the state of Tennessee is at its highest in COVID cases, especially with so many different people coming and going on the campus?
One of the things we've done is created some very strict visitation protocols for the campus. So we're going to limit access to the campus by outside groups, trying to continue to create an environment of what we call prevention. I love when Chancellor Engel talks about people taking care of people. So it's mocks taking care of mocks. So we're doing that through educating our students, faculty, and staff that we all have a duty to take care of one another. We're going to continue to enforce our PPE, the wearing of face masks, the washing of hands. We're asking faculty, staff, and students to perform self-checks in the morning to make sure that they are not exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms. And for the most part, we're going to stay data informed in our decision making. We will monitor COVID-19 progression across the state and the region every day and take that data and make the proper assessment of it and make the proper decisions.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Dr. Smith, we have a question about a COVID-19 vaccine being required for campus if it becomes available. Would that be for all students or just those that live on campus?
It's a requirement for all students and will only require students to receive a COVID-19 vaccine that has been properly tested through the federal vaccine approval process and the FDA, and it's shown to be safe based on the data from clinical trials. I know there's concern about a vaccine being rushed to use across this country, but we will not require anyone to take this vaccine that I wouldn't take. So there will be a subset of our population, students who qualify for an exemption based on health or maybe religious reasons or known allergy to one of the components of the vaccine. They will have to request this exemption. This is a system-wide directive, and it is to really help us control the possibility of an increase in COVID.
Dr. Smith, we've also gotten several questions about will there be temperature checks when students either are on campus or when they enter a classroom?
We're asking people to self-check, and it's the honor system. You know, in the morning, right now, faculty and staff who are coming back onto campus have a self-check app where we have to manually enter our temperature, and we have to go through and talk about whether we have symptoms or exposure and that kind of thing. And then we either get a green check or a red check, and it tells us what to do then. We are going to do the same thing for students, and it's going to be used through our electronic medical record system. and we will get a notification through University Health Services if there are concerns. But at this particular point in time, it would be very difficult for us to stand at a door and check a temperature on 15 students and allow them to be socially distant. So at this point in time, it's going to be the honor system that the students need to take their own temperature. In multiple orientation sessions and some information that we've sent home to new students, I said that please make sure that parents send a thermometer or two, some Tylenol and some ibuprofen, and we're of course going to provide them with the face mask. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Dr. Hale, I noticed that you had a follow-up to a question that was asked earlier, and I wanted to give you a moment to discuss student modification of their scheduling.
Susan, I appreciate that. The question earlier both asked about class formats, but also asked about when student schedules would be finalized. Every semester, we are adding classes as there is demand, right up until the time that the semester begins, based on waitlist data that we have and some things like that. It's also the case that students can currently access the system to modify their schedules. And as of this morning, there were face-to-face class seats available and some online class seats available. Students will be able to modify their schedules according to course availability all the way up until the drop and add period ends, which I think, and I'll look to Dr. Freeman here as well, I think is August 23rd for the fall. And so your students can currently modify their schedules, and they'll be able to continue modifying their schedules up through August 23rd. Susan, thanks for the opportunity to follow up on that.
Thank you, Dr. Hale. Dr. Hale, could you talk a little bit about the schedule? Actually, sorry about that. If the students' classes are all online, would there be any online fees associated with that, or what the tuition repercussions would be?
And actually, I'm going to pass that question off to our Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, Dr. Brown.
If it's a traditional course that's normally taught as a campus-based course, and we've moved it online for social distancing, the normal tuition and fees will apply. We will not add an online fee to the students there to lower the cost burden there. So that's what we're doing to mitigate costs. Also, I would like to tell the parents we will have no increase in tuition and fees for the university this year. We did that to make sure that we could help parents across Tennessee have affordable access to our educational system.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I have a question about academics. Will the professors still hold office hours on campus? And if so, what will this look like?
As I mentioned earlier, our safety team has been through every space on campus and has indicated that it is safe to have a faculty member and a student in an office at the same time, and that they can remain appropriately socially distanced when that happens. So faculty members, especially those who are teaching in any of our face-to-face formats, will be holding office hours in a combination of formats, some of which will be face-to-face and some of which will probably be virtually. Many of our faculty members who are going to be teaching exclusively online will probably hold their office hours in that way as well. Parents, you should know if you are less well versed in Zoom than those of us who've been living in Zoom meetings for the last several months. If your student needs to share documents or needs to share something like a problem set with a faculty member, that's possible to do in a virtual setting as well. And so the answer to the question is office hours will take place in all of the formats that we will currently use for instruction, but all of our campus environments will be safe for a student to come by and meet a faculty member face to face.
Thank you, Dr. Hale. Next question we have is for you as well, Dr. Hale. If my son does not want to take online classes, how does he select in-person courses that apply to his degree?
Well, the first thing I would do is simply go through the ordinary scheduling process and schedule modification process. If there are not available seats right now, then I would encourage him to enter the wait list for a particular course that he's interested in, because again, we will be trying to add additional courses based on those wait list data. And so it is really important that students use the wait list of a course that they need to have, or if they're interested in having, is closed. But again, as of this morning, there were face-to-face seats available in a number of courses. And I would suggest also some patience, persistence, and reaching out and communicating with the department head for the department in which he's pursuing his degree or needs to fulfill a general education requirement.
So I think we're near the end here, and we have a lot of questions. I have copied them to a Word document. We don't know how to get you the particular answer, but we will try to figure out how to post these so that people can get answers to questions. There's a lot of great questions. I can assure you that we're going to continue to monitor the cases locally on campus. We will, there was one question, have a website where we'll be monitoring these. We will, as part of the University of Tennessee system, the UT Health Science Center in Memphis is a part of our system. There's a number of infectious disease experts there that we consult with on a regular basis. Dr. Smith is part of a system-wide task force that's looking at managing health and safety of each of the campuses and comparing best practices across them. We're certainly monitoring hospitals and admissions and capacity so that we understand as we look at moving forward the local situation, actually the testing availability and the testing materials and the turnaround time on the tests are something we're monitoring to make sure that we can continue operating in a face-to-face mode, even at the reduced way that we have. There are certainly options if things don't go for the better in terms of focusing on laboratories and maintaining face-to-face operations there. If any of your students are doing research or experiential learning opportunities, we're anticipating those are going to continue. I can tell you they are a priceless experience that open a lot of doors for our students and provide incredible practical experience that helps our students get jobs. So we're trying to balance all of these as we look at the balance of face-to-face instruction and online. And we will continue to update the situation and monitor things as we go along. You know, we've all seen the increase in COVID-19 cases recently. And I can tell you we are monitoring this very closely. So, with that, we will try and get the answers posted. I know you all found out about this online forum through some contacts with us. We'll try to use the same methods to get a hold of our each of you so that you know where to look online to find these questions. We'll try to group them by areas so you can hone in, because I think we've got 217 questions that are left open. And and some are the same or very similar, some are nuances on each other, some are very specific. And we may not be able to address a particular individual case, but are we going to have work study? Yes, we're going to have work study. There's a number of easy things that we can also look at. Thank you so much for your trust in us. I can tell you, we take this trust very seriously and are doing the very best we can to live up to your expectations, to provide an outstanding educational experience in a safe environment. And we are looking at how we actively engage students in activities, and some of them may be virtual, some we hope will be face-to-face, some will have different options to come on in a face-to-face or virtual manner. But those interactions with fellow students, participating in organizations, are so important to the educational experience of our students. And in some respects, it's an equally important role as it is with our classroom experience. And for students in student government or doing research, as I mentioned, it really is a great opportunity to grow personally and professionally. So thank you to each of you for what you have asked, participated. If you have burning questions, each of us are accessible on the UTC email, and we may not be able to personally answer a email, but we can direct it to somebody to get your question answered. And our email scheme is just first name hyphen last name @ utc.edu. So mine is Stephen with a V-E-N, S-T-E-V-E-N hyphen Angle @ utc.edu. Gerald Hale, Richard Brown are exactly the same format. We will do our very best to make sure you have answers to questions. Dr. Freeman, Yancey-Freeman, and he's got a team of people who are really responsive, and we will do the very best we can to make sure you get answers to your questions. So thank you. We appreciate you being a part of this, and look forward to a communication from us of how we are following up with the open questions. So thank you so much for being a part of this online forum. And we really look forward to having your students here. The campus life is really important, but I want to tell you that, this experience right now, we are all in new areas and trying to figure this out, and we are going to do an outstanding job for your students. Thank you.